Hello, Amy.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am good.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have episode, what are we on? We're on episode 5. And
Yeah.
today we're so excited to be talking about real life positivity. And we're going to revolve our conversation around curiosity and discovery.
Yeah, we are.
Oh, such a good topic. I'm excited about it.
Me too. It's so foundational because it really is the heart of how we start everything with I am noticed. We usually say, I am noticed is really about relationship building,
Mhm.
communications, communication skills. That's funny. Oh my. Yeah, because when we have those things, then we can practice
Yes.
and then we can see the outcome of confidence and resilience. So I love that we're going to kind of dive into what that looks like for us practically,
Mhm.
because I think without that foundation piece, we can really just like be building our relationships on our perceptions of others instead of who they really are and who we really are, and it just loses the authenticity, feels a little shaky. So
Absolutely.
especially right now with us having so many things unknown and in question, it'd be good to lock this in and kind of feel more confident about our relationships.
I love that. And I think in the absence of asking questions and getting curious, then we have this headspace
uh,
and just wander. And I think if you've practiced good skill sets there and you have good mindset, you can kind of reframe and keep that in a healthy space. But even those who practice it so often and are really good at it still can fall into a pretty unhealthy pattern of if I don't have that information, my mind's going in some hard spaces because I'm making stuff
Absolutely.
up. If I'm
Yeah.
asking the questions, I'm like, wonder
Well,
what.
and we're really good authors at making up good stories
Oh,
too.
yeah,
And we
absolutely.
can like come up with all the supportive evidence and make sure that we are absolutely right
For
about the things we think if we don't ask good questions and get curious.
Like I'm like Tom Cruise in what's it? You can't handle the truth. What's that movie?
Oh, yeah, A Few Good Men.
You good man. I'm like that lawyer. I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I've got it honed in. I'm ready.
Yes.
So you have
Yes.
to ask good questions.
Yes. And so I think seems so complicated sometimes, relationships,
Mhm.
understanding people, communicating. But really, we have gotten so much mileage out of the simple question, how are you doing?
Absolutely. It's how we start
Oh,
almost, well, I would say every training, unless we just have some really unusual consequences or circumstances that we couldn't do that. But
mhm.
so important. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Like what's going on? And I will say we have been intentional with making sure we make time for that. And so
Mm,
I think that's an awareness. So it's kind of exciting that we're in a space where we've talked about time before in our previous conversations. So it's interesting. We have more time,
mhm.
but we're filling it. Like we're finding a ways to fill that up. So I think it's just the reminder today that using some of that time for asking good questions, getting curious and discovering, I think it would be very beneficial
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
when we're asking people how they're doing, a lot of times, and we didn't talk about this before, so I don't know what I'm gonna find out here, but
Oh,
a
girl.
lot of times we say we're doing this so we can connect with them.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of formulating in my own mind. I'm curious what's in your mind. What do you what do you feel like you get
Well, I think,
when you get someone's response to that question?
well, yeah, I think the reason why we like to do that in our trainings is so we get a pulse of the room. So we have content that is very universal. It's used with all age groups from kindergartners to superintendents. So it's not necessarily that like the content will change, but it's if we get a pulse from a room and we ask out of on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you? And 10's like I'm awesome, having the best day of my life, and a 0 or 1 is like I'm not okay. So if we get in a room and we ask that question and we know we have 5 and unders, that I think the way we communicate and the way we connect will
Mm,
it's different than when we're in a room with people with, 7, 8,
mhm,
9, 10s. I think
mhm.
the tone changes. That is where that communication and those skills come in to understanding who you're talking to, what are their needs, what's happening with them, what's their story. Now, we're just asking how are you feeling, so we don't always get to know all those ins and outs, but it still gives us kind of an overarching feel of the room, the tone is a little bit down right now. It's a little bit harder. So we can assume that right now, and we're coming in with enthusiasm because that's how we are, and we're excited to see each other, and we're excited to connect with our audience. But if we could ask everybody out there, how are you doing? I'm sure we would get a huge range of answers. Because if you just took a walk and it's a pretty day, you might be feeling like you're a 7, 8, or a 9.
Yeah,
But if you're don't have a job all of a sudden, or you have crazy hard circumstances, or you're sick, or you know somebody who's sick, like your numbers are going to be lower. So
yeah,
I think it's a way to create a quick connection, and then the future discovery and the future curiosity kind of lends itself to really making a deeper connection with that person.
yeah.
So,
Because we're calling it relationship building. It's not one time.
sure.
It's practice. It's ongoing building. So I've heard a lot of people talk about what I'm calling emotional duality right now. It's like I'm happy and I'm stressed out. I'm grateful and I'm really worried. I'm kind of a lot right now, and that kind of lends me to wanting to dive in a little bit, and you've said it a couple times, to curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
So being comfortable to ask the question, being okay with whatever the answer is.
Such a good,
So I,
yeah,
I
put thought,
love how you said that it kind of changes your tone or our tone
yeah,
if we find out that a room's different. But I think you have to be in a place to be able to adjust.
yeah.
So I don't know even how to
Well,
how
so
to open that up, but
so there's a time commitment and there's a willingness, right?
mhm,
Willingness to understand and to want to be curious, you know?
yeah.
I think it takes both of those to be curious and to,
So if you were going to ask somebody how they're doing, maybe you just need like a minute, right? Like in terms of time. But then the deeper you're going to go in that conversation, the more time it would take. So that's kind of what you mean by time.
yeah.
What do you mean by willingness?
Willingness is when you or I ask a question on how you're doing, we really want to know. I
Mhm.
think societally it's gotten normal to be like, "Hey, how you doing?"
Like, fine.
I'm fine.
You know that's my F word.
Poet. Mine too.
I like it.
And there's a lot of research there, and there's uh it's if we get so mundane and used to just being fine
Mhm.
with that like common rhetoric, I think it's going to be really continue to be sad.
So so I think sometimes fine, I mean fine gets a bad rap. I give fine a bad rap. I don't like fine. But I think fine is utilitarian in the fact that if I say fine and you say okay, we can assume that all is well and we can move on and not have to unpack anything hard. But
That's true.
here's the thing that I think happens with that, and Brene Brown speaks so well to this in terms of wholehearted living. But if you cut off the end of the emotional spectrum, that is all the hard stuff,
Hmm.
also deaden the good stuff. So the reason I don't like fine is that it oftentimes robs people of their joy at the same time that it robs them of their sadness. And so when you say willing,
Hmm.
I wonder how many people might hear you and be like, man, I don't have the energy to deal with whatever's on the other side of that answer. And I've certainly felt that way as a parent. I felt that way a lot as a parent in the last few weeks. Like I can feel it from one of the girls. I want to look the other way and go like clean out a drawer or take a walk or, but I know better. And I say, how are you doing? And what's going to come there if I lean in and listen to that, is something that I'm going to have to sit with. I'm going to have to try not to fix it, though I'm going to want to fix it.
Yeah, so it's
Oh,
do I have time to be curious and ask
yeah.
a question? And am I willing to go where this needs to go?
Ah,
Or ultimately to make that connection, like we were talking about, like that's a self piece. Like, am I in a space to handle this? I am curious, but I'm willing to go where that person needs.
yes. Yes.
It's an investment for
It's an
sure.
investment. It's a big investment. But I think, and I'm sure for people who've heard us live before, we make reference to there's no such thing as dragons.
Yep.
I think that if we know that that a relationship could really benefit from discovery, and we ignore it, we put it off, or the time commitment and the
Reader. Yeah.
need for willingness gets bigger and
Yeah.
bigger and bigger as that builds.
Yeah.
Um, and not just the problems get bigger. Maybe there's a disproportionate relationship there. The problems get bigger, but the opportunity to connect gets smaller
Sure.
because there's not trust being built there that you actually are engaged in the relationship. So I think about the classroom teacher, oftentimes having a limited amount of time to make real connections.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you hear students talk about those teachers who legitimately care and connect,
Hmm.
which there's so many of them. I mean, that's what we should do just for fun one day, is just start naming off amazing. We'd be here all day.
We have so
So
many.
many teachers out there who are driven by that desire to form those relationships, and it happens in almost a nanosecond, little nanoseconds along the way of genuinely asking good questions and then listening to the answer.
And I think it takes time to build that trust up. Because I mean, I've had that conversation where I've asked them a simple conversation, like, "Hey, how you doing?" And they're like, "Fine," and I'm like giving them a look. This just happened probably 2 months ago, and he said, "You really don't want to know how I am." And I said, "Actually, I do. I really do." And I think at that moment, that person didn't have the time to go there.
Uh-huh.
But just by me saying, "Actually, I do care," we can set up another time to have that conversation if you'd like, or we can figure that out. But I do care because I don't want fine to be the normal. I just don't. I want to create deeper connections with people, and then what happens is with fine is you almost practice that. And then you kind of just don't feel the feelings and the, I don't know,
Yeah,
all the feels.
yeah.
We're just practicing the mm,
So when we oftentimes I can lay like I am noticed, like the name I am noticed on top of what we're talking about, and it makes so much sense. So
yeah.
that I am piece, that self-awareness piece, coming from both sides, both the person asking the question and, like you said, the willingness of the person to answer.
Yeah.
So that I am and knowing ourselves, and then the noticing. And I think noticing has a tendency to sometimes seem like it's just a compliment. And it is a compliment. We get more of what we notice, so I love that. But noticing really being, I see you, I hear you, you matter to me. What a beautiful example you just gave us, and in that person saying you don't really want to know, and you saying actually I do.
I do.
I
So
see
the
you.
discovery absolutely led to me noticing him and hopefully like giving our relationship a little bit more trust and a little deeper connection. And when we have time, we'll build that up.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Such a good
So
tool.
good.
So speaking of
So
tools,
speaking of tools, yeah.
I think the tool is just using discovery in your authentic way. So whoever's listening, how do you ask questions? Do you make time for that? What is your willingness? I think just having a good check-in with yourself, with where you're at, and then are you willing to do that? And do you think it would be a valuable tool right now? And I know I personally have used it with my family and friends in this time. Just,
So much.
it's pretty essential.
Yeah. So if the call to action is to ask yourself and then ask others how you're doing.
Discover with yourself. One of the coolest connection I've had with you and I was how you were using your self-care. And you ask yourself daily, like, what do I need? That question has been a lifesaver for me during this time. I have what I need. I have air, I have water, I have my confidence, I have resources, and I know some people, that's hard. It's, I think everybody has air, but even the air feels not safe right now, right? When we're out. So, but that question and that discovery and that self-reflection first is always our heart, just making sure we're locked in personally and that we feel solid and good so that we can get curious. So when we're confident, we can feel confident in asking good questions. I think it's important to keep the goodness going right now and to focus on the good, and it is like you said, a quick, easy way to get to noticing too, with just asking good questions, and that person feels good and safe and solid, and then you can get into building each other up.
Yeah.
So
So
good.
the call to action is to ask good questions, to do some discovery.
Yep, with yourself and
And
others.
okay, and then the bonus call to action
Bonus round.
going to be to get curious,
Yeah.
to really listen. I think there's an important disclaimer here, not to be like Debbie Downer, but there's a downside to discovery
Yeah.
if it's not coming from an authentic place.
Oh, for sure.
I think we've all been in a position before where it doesn't feel like somebody really cares how we're doing.
Hmm.
And that feels worse than if, you didn't even ever think of the person as a potential person to care for you at all. So I think we want to be careful. And I think you and I are really careful in training when we ask the question, how are you doing? We're listening for the answer. And
Absolutely.
so that curiosity, that willingness is really, really vital to this working, I think.
Absolutely.
Um,
Because I will say, as a disclaimer, I know this is true for both of us. We have content we want to get to in our trainings,
yeah,
but I know we both want to like sit down at every table.
I know.
I want to know your story. I want to know everything about you, like what brings you joy, what's hard, what's good, all that stuff. Like I I get a lot of energy from that. So there's an awareness too that someone may not. So again, that's where it goes to, like you're saying, being authentic.
Yeah, and I think you naturally do get a lot of energy from that. So do I. But I think from a also from a practical standpoint, you and I, after being in front of 20,000 plus people, know that the outcome of our time with them will
Yeah,
be better the more it can be geared toward each individual and their culture. And that's a tall order when you're in front of 20 people or 100 people.
right.
But we know there's value in that connection. That if
Absolutely.
there's connection first, then we can practice.
Yeah.
Um,
And I want to say too, as we're even talking, I'm thinking about when we are around all those people, we get a lot of feedback and we create a lot of connection. So with the process of discovery, it's protecting yourself too. So if you're curious and you discover and you're willing and you go there, and there's a lot of hard, I would just, I know we would both highly encourage keeping yourself safe in those conversations and in that time, whether it's immediate family, distant family, neighbors, friends, whoever you're talking to, because that's essential to keeping yourself safe and protected.
Gosh, we could do a whole another segment on that.
We
And
can.
ultimately, I hope that um, because it's not a full training, the connections made between like our foundation, that relationship building and communication skill set, practicing good habits for the outcome of confidence and resilience. Ultimately, a confident person can sit in that space
Yeah.
and discover. So we're always talking about bringing that cycle full circle. So on like another episode, maybe we can dive into that, like how confidence plays a role
I love
in
that.
our ability to come back and discover and build relationships and have a good relationship with ourselves.
For sure.
um, because absolutely important that we're able to serve from that really authentic place.
I love it.
Oh, so good.
So
So
good. And I think
yeah,
I want to say this really quick. I know we probably should go, but
I know we could just keep talking all day
keep
though.
talking. But like it's your authentic self and discovering in a way that feels good for you and that's in your confident space. And also what's working for that other person or what's serving them.
Yes.
I know sometimes I can like I have a 13-year-old son, my Liam, like, okay, how you doing? What's going on? How's school? I'm asking like all these questions and he's like, I'm good, mom. I'm good. So I mean, I think making sure my authentic self is matching or in alignment with who I'm talking to.
Hmm.
Because if you go full force and they're not ready for that, so I just wanted to mention that too, as our call to action is to go and discover and be curious and be willing, but also just keep in mind who you're communicating with and what
Yeah,
that.
because I hope we haven't implied that the only way to discover is to say, how are you doing?
Sure,
Because I watch you and Liam, and you might ask that initial question, but you're actually paying attention
sure,
to how he's living as a result of
yeah,
that interaction and that relationship. So it's almost like, I imagine like if Rocky Balboa came into the Queen of England, he's like, "How you doing?" And then she's gonna, I don't know how that sounded, but uh, she's gonna answer him fine, probably, because that's just not maybe, yeah, she might. I don't know. I don't know the Queen of England, but
I don't know.
I just know that what you're saying, the intention of behind what you're saying is that if you can connect,
Absolutely, absolutely,
then you can
yeah,
build trust.
for sure.
Yeah. And
Authentic
so it's
connection.
how can we connect?
That's what we
Connection.
want. Authentic connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whew, good.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I always love just these visits and doing this with you. So thank you.
Yeah, so fun. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. We just again wish we could ask you a million questions right now and really know how you are. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. We love you.
Mhm.
Goodbye.
Bye everybody.